Hello, I think we're live, hopefully. Hello, hi, good evening, hi everyone, I hope you're all well. It's Marie here, and I'm going to be talking to you tonight very briefly about creating healthy boundaries. So in case any of you haven't seen my previous Facebook Live, I'm Marie and I'm one of the practitioners here at the Optimum Health Clinic. So I work alongside the rest of the team. So I'll be filling in today and I'll be back again next week as well. So today I'm going to be talking about healthy boundaries. So if for any of you who have come across any of the videos that we've done here already on the helper pattern, it's going to be something that comes up quite a bit. So it's certainly something that I get to see sort of quite a lot, when I'm working with people at the clinic. So it's the idea, I won't spend too long on the helper pattern because Alex has done quite a few videos on it, but it's this idea that if you have the helper pattern, you're typically someone who, has a real sort of connection to helping other people, typically very, loving, caring, people who are concerned about other people's well-being, which is a great trait to have. So it's not that we're saying that being a helper type is a bad thing. It's just about sort of looking at how you're helping, how you're being in the world, so that it's not to the detriment of your own needs. And that's kind of the way we approach it. So it's not that we're saying by creating healthy boundaries that you have to stop being a helper, because again, it's not that it's a bad thing. It's just it's the way that we're doing it. And if you're somebody who typically resonates with that kind of personality type, it's going to be even more important to look at how do you create these healthy boundaries, because very often we can, give and give and give and help and all of those great things, but it often just leaves us feeling really depleted. And lots of emotions and lots of things that come up. So one of the ways, we're going to look at saying healthy boundaries is a good way to kind of help support yourself in your recovery on whatever part of the recovery process you might be, or you might be at the beginning, you might be on your way. But also I think that it's very much about how you are in the world in general, I would say. So one of the things that has come up quite a few times in the last couple of weeks, typically so, is this idea of, okay, if we're a helper type and we want to do things for other people and we can't because we're not feeling well, we've got various symptoms, we need to learn to say no. But often what comes up in that recognition of we need to say no is this feeling of feeling guilty. So this is definitely something that I had a huge kind of experience with on my recovery journey, feeling sort of guilty about saying no to people, or just not being able to do things that you ordinarily would do, worried about not being there for other people and then the impact that will have on them, for example. So one of the things that tends to come up is when we explore this feeling of feeling guilty, there are lots of thoughts and thinking patterns around being a selfish person. So I don't know if you resonate, if you sort of think to yourself, if you ever find yourself trying to turn down an activity, or maybe not being on the phone for as long, or meeting that person, or whatever it is, there can often be these kind of thinking patterns around, I'm a selfish person. And if I say no, I feel guilty, and it means equals that I'm a selfish person. So it's an interesting one, because obviously that can feel very strong, and there are ways, you can sort of work on sort of various emotional states, but it's this idea of, when you actually unpick it and look at the evidence, and you kind of think about it, saying it's quite interesting when you see that typical responses from helper types are that I feel selfish if I say no. However, if you're a typical person that has to learn to prioritise your own needs, and it doesn't come almost naturally, because to you, you're somebody who just gives and gives and gives, when you think about it, if you have to actually sit down and kind of focus and deliberately choose to focus on how do I put my own needs first, the fact that you're doing it means that you're like the polar opposite of being selfish. And that's the funny thing in a way, because it's like, why do we kind of beat ourselves up and think that we're selfish, when really, when you think about it, you have to learn. You're somebody that might have to sit down and actually learn this stuff about how do I put my own needs first, because I've never done it before. So it's just kind of flipping it around in your mind. Sometimes that can be really helpful, and just sort of spotting it when it comes up, and just noticing, yeah, I'm sort of having these thoughts that I'm a selfish person, because just because we have thoughts, that it doesn't mean that they're true. They're thoughts a lot of the time. So that's kind of one way to sort of see it. And then the other way is, if you're somebody that keeps saying yes, and we often say yes at the times when we're exhausted, or times when there's a part of us that know that we really need to say no. If we keep saying yes, ultimately that often leads to resentment, and then we end up resenting the person that we helped, or we resent the situation. And that in itself, if it leads to resentment, then what's the point? You sort of look beyond that and think, well, in the end, it doesn't really lead you anywhere helpful. So it's just being aware of this idea of kind of guilt and feeling selfish, perhaps, and kind of looking at ways that, is it okay to say no? Does it feel okay? What might happen if you do say no? Often we think the world's going to end. When I used to, I'd sort of take on work when I was still sort of working in the legal profession. It was very busy, lots of things going on. And I used to honestly think if I didn't say yes to every piece of work coming my way, I thought the world would end. It was almost like it was all on me. It was all on my shoulders. So often, when we're trying to look at this helper tendency, we carry the weight of the world on our shoulders. And sometimes it's about stepping back, giving a bit of space to it, and asking the question, well, what will really happen if I say no? So I realise this is a really big topic, and it's not as simple. It's not saying it's simple. I'm not saying it's easy. It's just bringing it up and being aware of, this being an issue. Because as Alex is always saying, if you can see it, you don't have to be it necessarily. So it's just about bringing this up and just sort of trying to see if this features in your life, because it can be a really big obstacle to moving forwards. So we talk a lot here about getting the body into more of a healing state, getting out of the stress state. And a huge part for many people, and it comes up time and time again, is this feeling of being there and doing it for others. So, just to recap, we're not saying that you have to stop helping. Very, very great traits. I still have a helper tendency. Wouldn't be doing this job if I didn't. It's just looking at having healthy boundaries, looking at when you can say no, and then noticing when these, thoughts and feelings, and especially thinking patterns around being a selfish person come up. Because like I said, the fact that you have to maybe learn and do a bit of focus on prioritizing your own needs is evidence that you're not a selfish person. In fact, you're the complete opposite, because you haven't even prioritized your own needs. So it can't be selfish. So one side note I'd say is often another thing that comes up is if you're a parent or a carer, or somebody who you're responsible for somebody else. So often it can be an incredibly big thing, for example, to say no to our children or to our family members or somebody that's, in our life. And again, it's a piece to work with when it comes up, but it's just about noticing when it does come up. And, one thing that sort of helped me when I was on my recovery journey, and I had my daughter, and I was a single parent, and I was kind of dealing with parenting somebody and looking after somebody. And, one of the things I started to realise was when I started having these boundaries, really little ones at first, it was almost like a way that I was modelling to my daughter. And, it's amazing how when you have children and even people around you, they can start, soaking that up. It's almost like by doing it ourselves, it gives that signal to other people. It reminds other people that they can look after their own needs. And often we're an example for our, to our children. So I bring that up because I know that, if you're a parent, it's not a situation you can change, because you're in that and your everyday is, involving your children and caring. But it's just about being aware that, saying no even to children, or, just lessening things that you do and putting some boundaries in place can be a really incredibly helpful thing to not only you, but to anyone that's, around, or anyone that you're caring for. So in order to create healthy boundaries, what I'd say is, it doesn't have to be that you wake up tomorrow and say, right, from now on, I've got all my boundaries in place and I'm not going to put myself out and, deplete my energy for other people. Maybe you will find that, but more often than not, it's just a case of noticing that this is playing out in your life. That's the first step. And then also maybe just focusing on one step you can take. So it's always a good idea to just break things down. So this whole thing about creating healthy boundaries is more of a practice. So it's like anything, the more you practice it, the better it becomes, the stronger you are in that area. So, if you're struggling with, it's really difficult to turn things down, to say no, to put boundaries in place, to support yourself, you could just pick one thing, one little action step that you can take, just to kind of gently nudge yourself along that road. So it doesn't have to be huge. You don't have to create a whole array of things. You can just be one little thing that you could dip your toe in the water and see how it feels and start practicing. Because the more that you put those healthy boundaries in place, the easier, it becomes. It kind of ripples out into other areas. And it's quite an amazing impact it can have on you, your energy levels, and just how you go sort of forwards in life and on whatever part of the journey you're on at the moment. So it's something I feel pretty passionate about, because it was an area that I really, really struggled with, and I see it come up many times in sessions. And again, I'm not saying that it's easy. Let's just acknowledge that it's not necessarily a simple, easy thing, but it's definitely doable, and it's definitely something that when you just bring a little bit of attention and focus onto it, you can start gently shifting the way that you do things. So that's it really for today, just kind of on creating healthy boundaries, and maybe more as a reminder of the importance of it, because often we kind of go through, we automatically, we're on autopilot saying yes, stepping up and being there for everybody. But sometimes it's a real question and really, really important of bringing the attention back to yourself, and then just asking what it is that you need, and then putting whatever boundaries are in place. It might just be even a slight shift, even just step one is just awareness that you have this, and then you can take it from there. So it's just a practice. Okay, so that's it for today. I'll just see if I have any questions. I don't think there are any, so I can't see them all. I'll just see if I can move it. Thanks everybody for joining in. Thanks for everyone that showed up live tonight. Lovely to have you here. Yep, so a few comments about, people feeling guilty, saying no, but I'm learning. Tracy, it's a work in progress, definitely. Karen, I always feel bad and then I think about it for ages after. It's that kind of thought patterns that can kind of haunt us, so it's just sort of catching them and just noticing that they're there, and then maybe just questioning them. Are they true? Am I selfish? Do I need to feel bad? And it's a learning process. And Paul and Chris, it says so hard to do but important. And again, it's definitely, I'm not sitting here saying it's easy, you can just do X, Y, Z and you've got it sorted. Of course, it's a work in progress. So it's just bringing that to your attention. If it's something that you're aware of, bring it back in, pay a little bit of attention to it. That's always the first step. And just see what's there, see what comes up, and challenge those thoughts, any thoughts around selfishness and feeling guilty, because just because you're thinking it doesn't mean that it's true. Okay, so that's it for tonight, kind of short and sweet. I'll be back next week, same time, and then it will be Alex the week after. So I'll be here again next Wednesday. So look after yourselves, take care, and I'll see you next week, or I'll speak to you then. Okay, take care. Bye.